Okay, my friends, here it is. The video that is going to explain to you the difference between compost extract, compost tea, and fermented fertilizers, and what to use, when, and where. Because I've been getting a lot of questions from you guys about this exact topic, so I'm just going to make a video that explains it all, because we use all those things on this channel, and all three of these things are the best friend of the natural gardener, who makes all their own fertilizers and all their own inputs. So let us get into it. So there's essentially three classes that we will divide everything into when using the natural fertilizers, liquid fertilizers. We're going to use compost extract, compost tea, and then fermented fertilizers. Now the extract is the simplest of them all, and that is just how it sounds. You're just extracting the nutrients and the microorganisms from the compost. And so I've made a video on this, the ultimate seedling fertilizer last year. Maybe I'll link to it right here. And in that, you essentially just pour the water through the compost, or you let it sit for just a few minutes and move it around, slosh it around a bit, and then take it out. And what you're left with is the liquid, but you have to screen it, okay? So watch the video. We do it through a paint strainer, and what you're left with is the microorganisms that were already present in the compost and with the nutrients that were present in the compost. And so this is a really good thing to utilize when we are indoors, when we are watering seedlings, or when we're growing indoors. We like to use extract because we don't get any of the insect eggs, or any of the fly larvae, or any of the mites, and any of the bothersome, irritating kind of pests. The extract really helps safeguard against that. So extract is wonderful, and it's good to use in many circumstances, indoors, seed starting, but there are some limitations to it, and I'll explain those in a moment. So compost tea then is the second thing. Now, compost tea is essentially creating liquid compost, and it's very different from compost extract, because the extract, we just extract what was already there. We don't multiply anything. But with the compost tea, we are going to take the compost along with a couple of other ingredients, the fish fertilizer, and you will see in my upcoming compost tea recipe video. But we take the compost, and then we introduce a food source, and then we aerate it with an aerated, with an air pump. And that's going to help to breed the microorganisms, guys. And remember, in the ideal situation, microorganisms will double every 20 minutes. Think of how fast that is. And so we add the food source with the compost, and we are literally multiplying the microorganisms that existed in the compost. This is why it's so important that we start with a high quality compost when making a compost tea. How many of you know just a little application of compost, what it can do for the plants? Compost is so wonderful in so many ways, and you need to be making it yourself, the high quality stuff. But then when we make the aerated compost tea, we are multiplying, turning the liquid essentially into liquid compost. So a little can go a really long way. But there are some limitations to that, and I'll speak to that in just a moment. Now, the anaerobic ferments here, those are like the JDOM things, the things that we put in a barrel with the leaf mold, and we don't put an air stone in, we don't do anything. And here's how that really works. So everyone it seems to be really scared. Oh, it's anaerobic fermentation. It's bad. It's bad. Not necessarily, guys. Here's what happens. We put everything into the barrel. Say we're making the weeds tea, the fertilizer of everything. We put all the plants in there, put the leaf mold in there, fill it up with the water, seal it with the bucket, okay? So the microorganisms, most of which are conditionally anaerobic, meaning that they can survive in the presence of oxygen or without oxygen just fine and do their job, they are gonna go to town digesting all of that food source. And so they're going to proliferate in all kinds of gnarly things. You're going to see larvae, and you're going to see all kinds of molds and fungi and fuzzy white stuff and pink stuff. And it's all good. That's all part of the anaerobic fermentation process. And it's going to break down. And then once all of the food source has been consumed, those microorganisms are going to die. Once the food source and all of the oxygen and everything is consumed, they die. But they leave behind their bodies and their interactions with each other and their feces, which all of that is richly plant available. So that makes a really good fertilizer. We then apply it to the soil, and many of the things can be absorbed directly by the plant because it's already been broken down through the soil food web in the liquid chamber. But the remaining things are in very simple forms that the soil microorganisms can then digest and create plant food for the plants. This is why I highly recommend, and I've kind of changed my tune on this over the years because I found that this is the best when you're making the anaerobic ferments to create the ferment, seal it, and then let it completely digest. We don't start using it while it's still breaking down like I used to do, but I've since changed my tune on that a bit, and I've noticed it is best to wait until the whole thing is pretty much broken down. So it's a longer term thing, the anaerobic ferments are. But that's how we ensure that everything is thoroughly digested and made as plant available as possible. Now, there are distinct limitations between the three, and here's when you use each one of them. The compost extract is wonderful, but the limit is that you only get as much as compost that you have. So it really consumes a lot of compost, or it can make a really dilute sort of weak tea. But that's the number one drawback, is that you're not multiplying anything. You're just, what you have right there is made liquid. But it's wonderful if we need to do it indoors. Now the compost tea, we are multiplying what we have. So we're taking a small amount of compost plus some worm castings plus some leaf mold. You'll see my recipe coming up here. And then we are multiplying with the food source those microorganisms. But the main drawback, if you want to call it that, of the aerated tea is that you can never multiply the nutrients. Remember that. You cannot multiply the nutrients. 2 plus 2 always equals 4. It can never equal 5. So you cannot end up with more nutrients than you started with because they don't grow and multiply. But the microorganisms dramatically grow and multiply. And that's the real ticket, because most soils have everything the plants need if it could be unlocked by the microorganisms. So we are going to enrich the soil and the leaves and everything with the wonderful microorganisms in the compost tea. Another huge plus of the compost tea is that it doesn't smell. It has a wonderful aroma, sort of yeasty, like a fresh made bread, as opposed to the anaerobic ferments. Those smell like the putrid stench of death. Yes, they do. And that can be quite unpleasant. So that is the main drawback of that. And the anaerobic ferments, I no longer put them on the leaves of the plants or anything like that, because I feel that it's just best added to the soil. Over the years and through the observations and experimentation, anaerobic ferments are best allowed to ferment all the way and then apply to the soil. The aerated compost tea, we apply to everything. It loves it, guys. Last year, all I used was my aerated compost tea recipes, and that's it. No other kind of fertilizer, no other kind of anything. And it's everything that the plant needs. And it can help crowd out pathogens and do all kinds of good stuff when we apply it to the leaves, to the soil, to everything. So the aerated compost tea is a wonderful thing. The extract is also a wonderful thing, but it's just not enough unless you have truckloads of compost. So that's the main difference, guys. The only real fertilizer is the anaerobic ferments. That's what has the actual nutrients in it, the NPK, mag, and all that other stuff. Aerated compost teas do as well, definitely, though not nearly to the same degree. But again, if you have the right microorganisms in your soil, then you don't need to be even thinking about NP and K and all that other stuff. The microorganisms will be able to break it down. So there you go, my friends. Let me know if you learned something. Let me know your experience in the comments. Also, put in the comments what you've got started. What are you growing this year? Other people like to read through the comments. There's a live Q&A every Saturday at 12 noon Eastern time right here on this channel. I can answer whatever that you want. Also, check out the links in the description. There's the Amazon storefront where I've compiled everything that I'm using. You can get the exact same thing right there. And now is the time to be planning your garden. I will direct you to this playlist here where you can plan your garden, or this playlist here where you can make your own fertilizers. See you next time, my friends.